Chapter 14c. A New Hope, Nier Chapter 14b. Non-canon Omake. My androids are better than yours. Point 1. I finally managed to magical imprint onto a world to make it easy to find my way back and even send stuff, and it even had Wi-Fi courtesy of YoRHa, who refused to allow me to go to another world without some way of maintaining contact, as my little harem would be following me on my adventure to the new world that looked promising. Granted, I was only able to see the inside of what looked to be a copy of the same bunker I have been living in. Maybe my bunker is one of those universal constants, like New York being in both Marvel and DC. Even with their own original major cities added, they still couldn't take the Big Apple out of the world's history. I thought as I stabilized the portal. Okay, it's good to go now. Crossover. I have to be the last one through to close the portal on the other side, I ordered, and the twins and the YoRHa models nodded in understanding and crossed through the shadowy window into the other world. It was like being compressed down a thin tube, as my darkness portal was similar to the apparition in Harry Potter, as it twisted and compressed space to get to another point, but far more powerful in comparison, as I could jump to different worlds without running into barriers, whereas they couldn't even leave their island of Britain without splattering against a dozen wards. Status report. Commander White ordered from 2B's pod, and she sounded off that the air was breathable, and the connection was stable. Good. Now Jake, I understand you want to explore, but... Hey! Jake, stop. I already threw open the door to the vault and grimaced as I saw the same dusty sky as before I came here. Seems to be a parallel Earth rather than an entirely new Earth, I mumbled, taking in the similar surrounding areas that matched the pre-worked-on vicinity of my bunker before we cleaned it up and made farmland out of it, and I abused my life-oriented magic and was able to easily grow any crop at the expense of the nutrients in the ground. Are we androids cursed to remain bound to this dead world? White sighed through the connection, but I couldn't help but grimace, as this was possibly the worst location for a first world, as this had to be demoralizing. Either way, we quickly made our way to where the resistance camp was back in our main world, and we made amazing time, as I was able to make solid platforms out of earth and carry us all through the sky. Before we could enter, I facepalmed, seeing the duo exiting the resistance camp. Is that us? 9S muttered, seeing her old male body following 2B as she jogged out of the camp. They seem to be on a mission, I muttered, seeing them running quickly in a certain direction. Should we introduce ourselves? E6 quietly suggested. It seemed the other androids agreed, but I wasn't sure how similar this world was to my previous one. What if the androids absolutely hated humans for some reason? I don't think I could kill the doppelganger of a woman who wakes me up with blowjobs and ham, egg, and cheese sandwiches. I thought, thinking of 9S wanting to kill me for simply existing. Let's just follow them from above, and if something happens that they cannot handle, we will intercede, I announced, and they agreed to my decision, with the twins relaxing against me as I flew our little island in the air, but I was smart to camouflage the rock to match the dirty gray sky above us, so unless they saw us at an angle, they probably wouldn't notice us. It was only when I saw the broken-down castle in the distance that I recalled in the original game that 9S, 2B and A2 met, and more importantly fought there at that castle. Welp, let's watch the fireworks, I couldn't help but think as I smiled wryly at the sight of both androids tearing their way through the castle. It couldn't take any longer, as the pivotal moment came as the duo stood next to the weird crib with the baby machine in it, and with a loud clang, a dirty and disheveled A2 slammed her sword through the baby robot and lifted the impaled robot on her sword as it squealed lightly. But as she swung her sword violently to the side, the machine was thrown off and broke on contact with the stone walls of the castle. I pulled the floating island down and in front of the broken window as we all heard 2B's pod announce that A2 was a fugitive of YoRHa and was slated for execution, but even as 9S sought more information, A2 already started the battle as she swung her large great sword at 2B, who met her blow. But her strength was lacking comparison to A2's full strength, as her model was built with only strength in mind and no defense. Yeah. Nope, I am not watching this go on. I spoke, and as I stood up, I pulsed my mana, and the surrounding area, and even within the castle, was coated in a purple haze as my gravity spell traded the pure power to crush Goliaths in a small space with a large radius, and brought the doppelganger androids to their knees as I floated, using gravity magic on myself to become lighter than air. This is enough, I called out, and all the androids looked at me in confusion at my abilities keeping them bound in place. Before their pods could open fire upon me, as they weren't affected by my gravity with their own magical flying system, I called out to the YoRHa people, obviously listening. Commander White, come to the line now. Even with me clearly forcing him to his knees, I could see 9S gawking at the sheer balls on me for calling out white, and she didn't disappoint as her frosty voice came through 2B's pod. "Who are you, interloper?" she questioned before seemingly backtracking. "Never mind, it doesn't matter, just allow 9S and 2B to complete their mission and we can discuss compensation and your identity." "Yeah, no." My Commander White lost the majority of her pride after I managed to get a live stream into the space station for me to teleport into, and I spent the next few days simply buried in her tight ass and doing my best to mind break her, and succeeded into making her submissive to me, at least unless it concerned my safety. "Whitey, don't make me teleport into your room and show all your subordinates how messy and uncared for your quarters are." For a moment there was pure silence, as it seemed no one understood how I threatened basically to narc at how the commander of the world's strongest android group didn't clean her room. But seeing how this wasn't going to get anywhere, I stood beside 9S and cut off the gravity on him, and then cut a small scratch onto my finger, making drops of my blood fall into the shaking hand he raised in shock at seeing my ruby drops of blood on his hand. "If you lick my blood, I am going to kick you," I muttered, seeing him bring the hand right under his eyes and close enough to his mouth. Commander," he stuttered, and then yelled as he was clearing, scanning my blood. "Commander, this is a living human. Here on Earth." I could hear the pure confusion in Commander White's voice as she asked for clarification. "Repeat that statement, 9S," she ordered. 9S simply sat back on his haunches in elation as he stared up at me in worship till he said, "I sent the data." Seeing how A2 and 2B were heavily confused at my presence, I made the rock I had floating outside come to the edge of the window, and my girls jumped into the castle, making all the doppelganger androids gawk in confusion. As I went to speak, I released the gravity holding down 2B and A2, and I was right with my assumption, as they didn't attack me or each other. "We are just temporarily in this world to explore, but the A2, 2B and 9S of my world are my androids, and seeing a different version of them doing battle is highly discomforting." The 3 androids behind me, I mentioned, smiled with pride as I called them my androids, and I could see the pure jealousy in the doppelgangers, even if the new A2 tried to bluster her way out of being mentioned. "Even if you are a human, I wouldn't just beat your android," she snarled. I gave my own A2 a helpless look as she snorted. "Yeah, well, he wouldn't want you anyway. Look how filthy you are." I think she was actually telling her to clean up her attitude without either of them losing face, but the doppelganger, a too stubborn nature, rose up as she snarled at my A2, and it was only my hand glowing an ominous purple that dissuaded further combat. "Wait, is that experimental scout model in the back of me?" The male 9s called out, and I nodded as my 9S went over to talk to him, and I relaxed against a pillar and pulled my own 2B into my lap and wrapped my arms around her stomach just beneath her breasts as my Commander White started talking to the native one here through our pods.